Hi guys, it's Abby with the Bead Place and beadplace.net, and today I'm going to show you how to make this really cool Superduo wraparound bracelet that closes with a button. So you'll just need some Superduos, some size 11s, you'll need some jeweler's wire. You will also need 2 crimp beads, one large bead that's large enough for the hole of it to actually slide over the crimp bead. You will also need a soft flex wire cutter and a crimping tool. So let's get started. All right, the first thing you want to do is cut a length of your jeweler's wire that's equal to your wrist measurement times 4 plus a foot. So this is for a double wrap bracelet. So my wrist measurement is 6, so I cut 36 inches of jeweler's wire. So what you're going to do is work with this doubled. The first thing that you'll need to do is string on a number of seed beads that will be equal to the amount needed to fit around your button. So I'm going to start with probably 15 and go from there. Now what I like to do is just use my jeweler's wire to thread the seed beads. Instead of actually picking the seed beads up and threading them on, I'll use the tip of the jeweler's wire to actually scoop up the seed beads, and it's much easier that way. So I'm going to thread the number I need to fit around my button, and I'll get back to you. So my magic number is 34 for the size of the button that I'm using, but obviously it's going to depend on what button you choose, how big it is. So you want to make sure that the button can go through fairly easily, because once we get to the other end, the shank is going to be attached to something, so we want room for that to fit through. So now what we're going to do is thread on to both ends our Superduo. So these are Superduos, if you're unfamiliar. They're like a little figure 8 bead, and then when you stack them upright, you can see that they have kind of pinched corners, like that. What we're going to be doing is threading a Superduo onto both of these ends, then 1 seed bead on each end, then another Superduo, then 2 seed beads, another Superduo, and 2 seed beads. So I'm going to take both of my ends here and one through one side of a Superduo and one through the other side, like that. So I'll pull that all the way down, and I'm going to try to keep this as centered as possible on the thread, or I'm sorry, on the wire. If it's not perfectly centered, that is a-okay. So now I'm going to do one of these little seed beads on one side and one on the other side. This is what we have so far. So I'm just going to keep doing a Superduo on both, then a seed bead on one, a seed bead on the other. So there are a number of different tricks that you can use to make this go faster. What I like to do is line up my thread or my wire ends so that they're about the same length, and then just thread it like that. And then I like to pick the seed beads one at a time, just because that seems to be easier for me. But you can do a little bit of work up here at the top of your wire before you string it down, and then slide it all down at once. So this is what we have so far. So I'm going to keep working like this with the 2 seed beads, 1 Superduo, 2 seed beads, 1 Superduo for a while, and I'll check back in. Okay, so I have my bracelet strung to a point that it wraps around my wrist twice, and I just have a little bit of overlap if I have it on snug, like this. So what I'm going to do then is string 2 seed beads after my last Superduo,
1, 2.
And then what I'm going to do is string a crimp bead, my little 2x2 crimp bead. I'm going to string that onto my jeweler's wire. I'm going to string it on both. So I'll bring in for a closer look at what I'm doing. So I've strung my crimp bead onto the wire, and I'm going to slide it all the way down to meet my seed beads. I'm going to try my hardest to even out all of the slack. So I'm just going to run my fingers down the beads, and then I'm going to pull the crimp down as tight as I can get it. Now I have a crimping pliers here. I'm going to crimp. I'm going to turn to the side and crimp. I'm just going to work all the way around to complete this into a circle. Notice how there's a little bit of slack here. That's okay because we're going to use one of those large hole hex beads to cover it. So I've crimped. I'm just going to crimp a little bit more. And now what we're going to do is use our handy dandy soft flex cutter, or jeweler's wire cutter, and we are going to just trim this tail end off. Now what I like to do is just go around it a little bit more, just to make sure everything is mushed down nice and tight. So now I'm going to take my large hole bead, just make sure it's large enough to go over the crimp. I'm going to slide it down, and see how that covers up all that tail end there, and the crimp just barely fits into it. So that's perfect. All right, my next step is to load another crimp on, and then I'm going to string about 5 seed beads, and then my button, and then about 5 more. Now, depending on the size of your button, you might want to change that number, but I've got 3 on here. I'm going to do 2 more. I'm going to go through the shank of my button, and then 5 more.
2, 3, 4, 5.
And now I'm going to bring the wire back down through that crimp. All right, so tighten this as best you can. So bring the crimp down, pull the tail end out, and just repeat that, and try to get all of this slack out of the top here, and then I'll crimp it. All right, so I've taken all of the slack out of it, as you can see. Now what I'm going to do is crimp it just like we did the other one. So squeeze down, make sure it's lined up perfectly in the center. Try to not pop any of those seed beads. If you do, no big deal, the button's going to hide it. So squeeze down, squeeze the sides. So far no popping any seed beads. Gotten close, but nothing has broken yet. So squeeze all the way around and make sure it's perfectly secure. If you have a standard crimper, obviously you can use your standard crimper too. All right, so now what we're gonna do is trim this tail end so that there's just a little bit, let me give you a background so it'll focus. So trim this tail end so there's just a little bit of wire. And then we're just going to pop it right down into that hex bead, or the large hole bead that you've chosen. And we will be complete. Oh, gotta cut mine a little bit shorter. And we will be good to go. And that, my friends, is how we close off a Superduo wrap bracelet. thank you so much for watching, and if you are still a loyal subscriber, we appreciate it. Sorry about the little bit of a break that we took between videos. We moved stores. I moved personally. I had a baby. So I'm back. We're going to be producing more videos monthly, just like we usually did. So if you enjoyed watching, make sure to click the like button. If you have questions, comment below. Hit subscribe if you'd like to see more. Like us on Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, you know, all the usual places. All the materials can be purchased in kit form or individually at beadplace.net. And if you're in the St. Louis area, make sure to stop in and say hello. Thanks for watching.